Yo, what's up? It's Jimmy. I'm from Glitchy Thumbs. We're making characters, we're making games the glitchy way. And in today's episode, we have character 3.4 again for building it in Buildbox. This is Dino Turtle or Dino Head. I think that's what I was calling him. This is part 2. Since in part 1, I was trying to fix the joint issue that we had in Buildbox, dragging it from Blender. Check out that video if you haven't already for the part 1 version. You'll be able to see how I solved that problem. It took me some time, but we got it resolved. Without further ado, let's see what mechanic I decided to use for character 3.4, Dino Turtle. Let's go. On Buildbox, I decided to start from a template. It's been quite some time since I've used a template. You can actually scroll down and see all the templates they have. These are all free templates that they have in Buildbox. You just have to scroll over each template and see what the preview looks like to see if it will even work for your character. I was trying to find something that might work with character 3.4. You have to visualize a little bit just to see what you can do with these templates. Everything is going to be basic. There's going to be some sort of ball and it's navigating through some sort of obstacles. Some of them are triangles. They're either flying or floating. You have to just take your pick. Oh, actually, I forgot. We've already tried a template with one of the characters, Mousehead. I forget which character that is. It's one of the characters, but we did the jump tower template. I completely forgot about that. So this might be the second time we're doing a template with one of the characters. That's where my thought process was. Start implementing different templates into my skill set, make it part of my Swiss Army knife of game development so I can get more familiar with Buildbox, seeing whatever I can do since I'm deciding to make games myself. I'm just trying to familiarize with everything I can as soon as possible. This adventure run template looks pretty good. I think it would definitely work for character 3.4. So that's what I decided to try. You click it, click open, and here in the scene, you have everything already set up with the grass and the dirt and a bunch of platforms, a bunch of coins. The character is right there at the bottom. What I did was drop in our FBX. This is the fixed one where we fix the joints. If you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. You're going to find some great nuggets on how I fixed the joints in my characters and how you can do it too if you're using Blender to create your own characters. Definitely check that video out. Like the video and like this video as well. I appreciate it. I dropped this into Buildbox. In the player's node map, there's a group for the animated platformer. This is where all your animations are for your character. I clicked the idle animation, brought the animation list down. You're going to see there's a long list of other animations that's being used for the character that's already in the template. But since we dragged our FBX in, we can actually see our keyframe animations for character 3.4, Dino Turtle. At the bottom, you can see character 3.4, the fixed joint. They both have the same names. That's because I didn't rename things correctly at this time in the video. We always know that the first animation is the idle animation. If there's a second one, that's going to be the walk animation. That's the two animations I created in Blender. If you checked out the last video, you'll know about those animations I created. That's why I put the first one under idle animations. Pretty simple to swap out. For the walk animation, you can switch this to the second one at the bottom of the list. Do the same for the run animation. Select the second one because the walk animation and the run animation is pretty much the same thing, at least for testing purposes for our character in this template. Then in the subscene, this is basically where your FBX is supposed to be. The formatting is pretty much the same thing. If we click the FBX for character 3.4, you can see there's two animations, which is the keyframe animations on the left side. On the right side is the FBX with the subscene. That's pretty much the same thing for the player. We just have to swap it out similarly. I pasted in the subscene from character 3.4. First thing I did was connect enabled on the subscene to the created on the start. That's pretty much the first connection for the subscene. If we're going to be swapping this out, we need to connect the nodes exactly how it's portrayed already. I unhook the enabled from the original subscene. That's how I'm keeping track of things, doing things one by one, making sure they're the same. And then you have all these purple connections to the animation connection point. It's being connected from the top purple endpoint on the keyframe animation. We have to do the same thing for our subscene for character 3.4. That's what I did. Connected the idle animation, the walk animation, run animation, falling animation, jumping animation, and dying animation. That's pretty self-explanatory of swapping out your character with the subscene in our FBX. Click play to see what happens with our character swap for this adventure run template. This one starts out super big. You can actually size it down. You can see our character is showing, but it's facing the right side. The older 3D model is actually still visible because we didn't delete the subscene just yet. So they're going to appear visible in the game still. Normally, when I'm testing, I prefer to go straight to the gameplay. So I went to the mind map for this title screen. When you start the game with a template, sometimes there's sound or music of some sort. That's something that I personally don't like unless it's something I chose and I know that there's going to be music. For testing purposes of testing your game, I kind of like to have it quiet at first before I integrate sounds. Sounds is something to me that's going to be integrated towards the end of the game, not in the beginning. I don't know. That's just how I think. You can do it at any time that you want. You can integrate sounds whenever you feel like it's needed within your game for like background music, sound effects, etc. But for me, I wanted to remove it. So I went to the mind map and went through all the UI screens, just looked through the music section to see if there were any dragged files. For title screen, there was none. For pause screen, there was none. For the game UI, this one had a gameplay MP3 file. We want to remove this by clicking the X button. You can also do the same thing for the lose screen. They have a game over sound. There's a game over sound for the win screen as well. I removed all those, keep everything a little bit quiet. That's just how I prefer it. Making games in the beginning, I like to just focus on either the character or the gameplay itself with all the other objects and enemies and anything that we need to decorate the game with. That's where my focus was. That's why I removed the sound. You probably can't hear the sound in this video because I didn't record any sound for any of my screen recordings. When I do my screen recordings, I just record whatever I'm doing on the screen. That's pretty much the explanation for why I removed the sound. Back to the gameplay, we have this adventure run. Press start. You can see on the left side we have a joystick, and this is how we move around for our character. The 3D model is still there for the player because we didn't remove it yet. Our character is facing the wrong direction. It's not really moving correctly with the joystick. That's probably the first thing we should be fixing. I click the subscene for the previous character that was already used and unhooked the animation nodes. Press play again just to see what happens when we unhook the animation nodes. We unhook the animation nodes, but we still see the character when we press play. The character isn't moving anymore. It wasn't moving earlier, I don't think either. There was no animation anyways. I'm just clicking through each of the animations just to make sure I have everything selected correctly. For the falling animation, I just had it to none. The jumping animation, I set it to none. We don't have animations for any of these. Also, dying animation, I set it to none. We pretty much just have two animations that we can use. Since we don't need the character FBX anymore for the original subscene, I just delete it. That should remove the character from our scene and keep our character 3.4. Press play, see what happens. Now we have character 3.4, which is Dino Turtle. Just moving around. The idle animation is playing. We move around with the joystick, but he's still facing the incorrect direction. We need to add a -90 in the y-axis for the rotation. That should have character 3.4 facing us, similar to how the previous character was facing us. That should be correct when we move the joystick now. When we move right, character will move right. When we move left, character will move left. When we move forward, it will move forward towards us. When we move up, it will move away from us, facing away from us. So that works. Our character is a little bit small, so I decided to scale it up by putting 2 in the X, Y, and Z axis. Since we have an outline that we already created on our character, we need to also change that from white to black. When you click edit in the scene and then remove any shadows for the receive shadow, if that's something you prefer not to have in your character. The incandescent slider sometimes gets increased when I'm quickly going through all these settings and I accidentally increase the value. That lets me know how to use the incandescent. If you have it at a higher value, you won't have that low poly effect on your character. That's why you can see the difference when I bring it back down to 0. You can see more of our geometry for the 3D model. So it's pretty much up to you what you want to do. A good way to just test things if there's a slider is to go from 0 all the way to 1 or 0 to 100 just to see what the minimum value does and then also the maximum value. You can see the difference between 0 and 1. 1 actually looks pretty cool. It's like we have a texture on top of our character without any geometry. So it's a little bit cartoony, less 3D-ish, but the character is still 3D, so it might work with the gameplay. It's really up to you what you want to do. I just did it for testing purposes to see which one I liked. That way I have some sort of visual on what looks good for our character and what doesn't look good. Now when we press play again, let's see how everything looks with the changes we already made. The character is super huge now, because we have a value of 2. It was 2 times the size of the original size. That's actually not bad. You can actually see a lot of the detail within the character, like the cool shell pattern that I came up with. You can see a lot of the details with the idle animation. I actually really like this character. I'm surprised that I didn't go back and just use this character more often or create a game with it. I'm still thinking about it. I still need to review all the ideas that we had in the previous videos. I just record things and see what ideas I come up with. From there, I'll decide if I want to improve this character or improve the gameplay. Since the character is a little bit too big, let's bring it back down to 1.5 in all the axes for the scale. Make sure to press enter, otherwise your values won't get saved. Back to the mind map, where our UI system is. I click into the title screen and I click title just to see what everything is. This one looks like an image that was dragged in from a PNG file. So that's how they have the text for the logo. The background is also the same thing, another image that's being used as the background. The navigation button is the start button. They all seem to have an animation that was being applied in Buildbox for how it appears on the screen when the game starts. I click into the start node. This is where the built on Buildbox logo is. If you have a pro plan, which I have a pro plan, I bought the plan a long time ago. This is actually a disclaimer that my pro plan isn't a subscription, but the company transitioned into subscription plans. If you use Buildbox now, everything is subscription, so you have to pay monthly. But I've been a long-time user of Buildbox. Way before, years back, I was grandfathered in to the system. If you have a pro plan with Buildbox, you can remove their logo. That's how you would do it for your own personal projects or any commercial projects that you have. That's where you would do it in the start menu. I'm just doing like a whole bunch of random stuff in all my videos. I'm trying my best to make every video as different as possible on how I would use it. It just makes much more sense to use things from your perspective and explain it in a way that might be clear for any new users or someone who's trying to create games on their own. Anything that I recorded or anything that I'm doing in these videos is what I'm going to be just saying, whatever I feel at the moment in time. There's like nothing against having the Buildbox logo. I just prefer not to have it in my games. I just like removing things that I didn't add into the game. That's just my personal preference. Click play again. This is what I mean with the title screen. The start button is actually animated within Buildbox. You can do that at the bottom of the screen in the UI screen, but I haven't gotten to that point just yet where I'm animating buttons. We have a long way to go. I've just been experimenting with my own characters, dragging them in, trying to come up with a game mechanic that I think is best for my character at the moment in time, and seeing if there's other ideas that I come up with. There's a lot to do actually, but I haven't found the game that I want to really work on where I'll actually spend this time and then record the entire process. We're going to get to that point when we get to that point. For now, we're experimenting with the templates. I'll click start, and there's actually 2 characters on the screen for character 3.4. One is going to be the one we dragged in as the FBX originally, and then the other one is the one that I pasted into the player character. That's why there's 2 of them. That's what I noticed. This size is actually perfect at 1.5 for the scale. looks pretty good. I'm moving the joystick around to see how the animation will look. For our walk animation, it actually looks pretty decent. For the jump animation, we don't have any animation, so there isn't going to be anything playing. I think the idle animation into the walk animation looks pretty good. So that's how I'm testing this game mechanic, just moving it around with the joystick that's already available. This is a landscape game. I've built landscape games before, but I prefer things to be portrait just because it's upright and normally people hold their phones upright. It's just more natural. Unless you have, I guess, a platformer game like the one we're working with right now, it's perfectly fine having it in landscape. I went to File, Project Settings, changed the bundle ID to the bundle ID that I always use, which is com.gt.testergame. I use the same bundle ID for all my testing purposes. Just makes the entire testing so much easier that way. And here you can also see that the name on the device is Adventure Run, and there's also a game icon at the top that was dragged in already. They also have a full game name of Adventure Run. You can also change that if you want, or you just leave it. I just left it. The only thing I changed was the bundle ID. I went to Export, iOS, went to the Character 3.4 folder. This one I'm going to be labeling as Character 3_4_ Adventure Run. That makes it super clear of what this file is so that we remember when we actually come back to this point. If I do come back to this game for Character 3.4, we already worked on a Buildbox project, and that one is usually the one I use as _new. That one's mainly for any animations that I come up with that I want to test in Buildbox. That file is just going to be for animations. Now this one is a gameplay file, and I want to remember what the gameplay was because we used a template, so that's why I named it as Adventure Run. Save this. We're going to export the file in iOS. It's pretty much going to have the same name for the Xcode project. Back to the mind map under the game UI, I'm clicking the joystick just to see what settings there are for the joystick on the UI screen. I do the same for the pause button. This is just a navigation button. The joystick is a custom node, I believe, that was dragged in the UI screen. You can drag in BB assets into the UI screen as well. You don't only have the option to drag it into your scene, you also have the option to drag it into your UI screen. If you're pretty good at making nodes, you can create UI nodes as well. I'm still looking into the whole node system. Again, I'm not that very good at coding, but I do understand how visual scripting works. Quite possibly, maybe I'll be able to make my own nodes with no code, of course, but we'll just see. I'm just looking through how each button is. Like the pause button is a navigation button, just takes you to the pause screen. The joystick has a send node with an event name of joystick. That's how the controls work. The character probably has some sort of receive node. That's how those two interact. But I wanted to test this game on my iPhone. I went to the Xcode project. We exported, clicking the Character 3_4 Adventure Run folder, clicking iOS, clicking the Xcode project. This one is the white icon. Open it with Xcode. Signing in capabilities. Select your team. Under bundle display name, we already know that in Buildbox there was already a name for it, Adventure Run. You can also change it here. That's how you know where the two interact within Buildbox. The name under the icon is pretty much the same thing as the bundle display name. If you want to change the name under the icon, you can also change it here in Xcode. It'll do pretty much the same thing. It's probably better to change it in Buildbox first, so that way you don't have to always keep doing it in Xcode like how I am. I've just been doing that because it's familiar to me. It's like a reflex. I always do like the same pattern when I'm exporting Xcode. It's just natural for me to do that. That's how I've always done it. And that's just how I've been doing it for all of my games for years and years. Under signing in capabilities, like I mentioned before, add a value so you have a different app on the phone. So that's how you can test different apps. Press play and then you'll run it to your device. See how it looks like. Whenever the debug console is showing a bunch of outputs, that means it's successful. You'll definitely see it when you're playing with your game on the device and see the different lines of code. Well, that's not lines of code, but you'll just be able to debug your game better looking at the debug console in Xcode. I forget exactly what I was doing during this video. I don't think I was doing a screen capture just yet. I just wanted to test it to the device to see how it would play like just for a little bit. Once I did that, I went back to Buildbox and closed all these tabs because I'm not working with those screens anymore. It makes sense to close them. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole bunch of tabs open, and that's not very organized for your workspace. That's what I like about Buildbox. They have these tabs. I tend to just open a whole bunch of tabs for anything I do. If it's like a browser, I have a whole bunch of tabs for different websites. I tend to forget what I'm doing sometimes. I just keep it open. This is what happens in Buildbox. There's going to be a bunch of tabs with a bunch of windows. When you're finished with a certain window, so like a title screen, you're not really using it, it's good to just close it so that you know that you're not using it anymore, or you don't need to fix anything. It just makes more sense. That's how I've been organizing myself for different tabs. You can't have it open all the time if it doesn't bother you, but sometimes it does for me. I like to keep everything organized if I'm not using it. If I'm working with the character, which is the player in this video, then I would want to have that tab always open because maybe I'm going to drop some nodes in, maybe I'm going to have characters, or maybe I'm going to be changing the animations or doing something with the player. That makes much more sense to have it open. That's something that's pretty self-explanatory, I guess, but sometimes it's good to explain it for any new users that probably haven't used Buildbox before, or existing users. Maybe they want to change their own frameworks on how they work with their own games. Hopefully that's helpful. I don't know. I just think of things and I just record it. It sounds good. I felt like that needed to be explained for some reason. I just tend to think of things, and then when I have that thought, I rather just let that thought be recorded, and whoever finds it useful will find it useful. If people don't, they don't. At least it's out there, and at least I'll have it in video form for myself if I need to review it in any of my videos. When I ran it to my device, another thing that I didn't really like was the icon, just because it no longer has the previous character that was already in this template. Also, it's not an icon that I created, so I decided to remove it. When you remove it, it's super simple. Just press the X button, and then you're back to a blank icon. And if you need to drag one in, you can just drag it right on top. Pretty simple. I export the project again, so that way I have a blank icon for character 3.4. Normally when I re-export things, I just delete the previous folder. That way we know that the new folder is going to be the correct folder and we don't have any existing files that we don't need. Just move that one to the trash. If you have the Xcode project open already, it's going to show this error message that the workspace file disappeared. That's okay. You can just close it and then resume with what you were doing. Now we're exporting this Xcode project again. You can just rename it as the same name as before, or whatever name you feel best suits this character with your template. Back into the mind map, the game UI. When you click the joystick, there's going to be some settings on the right side. There's just going to be some simple ones like the position, rotation, scale, the send node, or whatever nodes that's being used for the joystick. On the left side, where it says your UI objects, this is actually where your BB assets show up, similar to how our characters show up in the other scene when we drag in different objects or different characters. This is where our assets will be for the UI objects. When you click onto the joystick, there's going to be additional settings on the right side. This is going to be the main settings for the UI object. You're going to see that there's a base, and that one has some sort of texture under the animation. There's another setting for the knob, which is what we're using as a joystick. This is the same thing with the texture under the animation. For some reason, the joystick was super small, and I thought there was something wrong with it, so I just dragged in another joystick, but I don't think there's any difference. Possibly there is. The one that I dragged in had an event name of J and 0. The one that was already in the scene had an event name of joystick. I thought that was interesting. The one on the game UI still works, so that's a little bit weird. But anyways, that was something that caught my attention. I think that's what I was thinking at the time too. With the Xcode project again, we go into the folder, open the project. If you exported a new Xcode project for your game and you deleted the previous one, you have to reset the settings again. That can be a little bit tedious and annoying, but that's all part of the process. You have to do it if you're constantly testing a new version of your game. on your device. That's just how it is. You always have to remember to do this pattern. That's why I always do the same thing over and over, because I've done it so many times that it's a reflex for me. You always open the Xcode project, signing in capabilities, select the team, change the bundle display name to your character name. At least that's how I've been doing it. So I'm familiar with that. Increment the bundle ID to the character so that we can have a different app on my iPhone, and then run the device. That's the typical pattern that you would have to do when you run your game to your device after you've exported it from Buildbox. There's a lot of little things that you have to remember in part of your workflow. That's why I'm always constantly explaining it over and over and saying the same exact thing. I'm trying to simplify it in a way where people will remember it. That's how I remember it for all the complex things. That probably makes it difficult for others to maybe try things out. Maybe you feel like this is something you can't do because there's probably too many steps. But that's how I felt too in the beginning. But as you work with all these different tools and all these different things, you start noticing different patterns, or at least I do. And then you just remember that pattern over and over, and then just repeat it until it's second nature. If you don't remember the pattern, just write it down, just exactly how I said it. Write those patterns down and then try to remember it step by step until it becomes part of your memory. That's how I normally do things. That's my thought process, and that's how I get better at my own workflow, just by repeating things over and over in different parts of my workflow. And you're not going to get it perfect the first time. You probably just remember one thing at a time. You probably remember like one part of the process, but that's okay. You have tomorrow and the day after and the day after. You just need to practice. Practice makes perfect. And I've been doing this for years, so it's like I know it by heart. If someone asks me, I'm going to easily be able to explain it. I just explained it to you guys, and I'm showcasing it, and you can see it always in my previous videos. If you've been watching, it's the same pattern. It's all about pattern recognition for a lot of things. I feel like a lot of things we do is pattern recognition. Sometimes people don't notice it, but it is. That's how you remember complex things. Just simplify it in a way that you'll remember. And that's how I remember. I'm running this to my device this time again. I'm just slowly like fixing things that I feel would prevent me from just testing this game mechanic just for the purposes of testing. When I run it to my device, I think at the time, I don't have the video for it because I didn't record things on the screen while I ran in Xcode. But you can actually do that if you just open QuickTime and then do a movie recording of your device while you're running it in Xcode. That should work on the screen. I just forgot that process of getting it on the screen. There's going to be like a disconnect when I run it to my device and I don't really know what I was doing at the time. Normally I would just test the gameplay, but I think in this video I was testing other things. That's why I'm like going back into Buildbox and removing things that I feel would be preventing me from testing it on my device. That's the purpose of this video, is just going through different things and removing it just so that I can just test with these templates. Back into the mind map. If you click under these UI screens, there's going to be a check mark for like banner ads or interstitials in the templates if you're using it for testing with your characters. All the ads seem to be running on all the templates. That's a little bit annoying to me because I didn't want the ads. I'm just trying to test the gameplay just to see. The ads might be a little bit annoying. But in order to remove it, what you would do is under interstitial ad frequency, change the 4 to 1, and that's going to set it to the original settings. Banner ad frequency is also set to 1. That's just the default setting for the banner ad and interstitial ad. Just uncheck those. That won't show any more ads in your game. You're going to have to do this for all the UI screens. Check all the UI screens, which are the green color nodes in the mind map. That will make testing the templates so much easier and not have to worry about the ads. I did the same thing across all the screens. Same process. The process of removing the ads in Buildbox would be uncheck banner ads, uncheck interstitial ads, make sure the banner ad frequency is set to 1, make sure the interstitial ad frequency is set to 1 for all the UI screens. And if there's multiple UI screens, you have to do it for all of them. It's tedious, but at the same time, it has to be done if you're just testing your games with no ads. This is probably something that's going to be useful if you're using the templates in Buildbox, because you're going to have to remove all of that. That's why I'm recording it. Again, since we made those changes, we have to export the Xcode project again by going to File, Export, iOS. Same process. We always have to repeat this. Remove the previous Xcode project by just deleting it and then using the same name that we named it before. before. So that's how I do it. Open the Xcode project, same process again, as I mentioned before, to run it to your device. You might find that this part is tedious. It's annoying, but you're going to need that practice. If you're going to be making games and uploading it to the App Store or Google Play, well, this is just going to be for iOS. So if you're uploading to the App Store, you're going to have to get used to that process. Might as well get used to it now by practicing. I haven't done this in quite some time, so that's why I don't mind doing it over and over. That just helps me remember a lot of little things that I need to do to export it to the App Store. This is just part of the process, so you're going to have to love it. We finally run character 3.4 with the event run template from Buildbox to the device. This is the screen recording that I did for this character. We play as character 3.4, Dino Turtle. And this is a platformer game. The typical platformer games where you have to figure things out in the gameplay. We have a joystick on the left side where you can move up, left, right, and down. On the right side, we have a jump button. We also have the pause button at the top if we need to pause the game. We have this little box that we can move around because it's set to dynamics. We can move it around and place it where there's a switch, so we can activate certain things in the game. That's why you see that the box fits in this little square. That's going to bring out some sort of jump pad for us because the box is activating that button. If we move towards this pad, it will bounce us up to the top. That's how we collect those hovering coins. Now we just need to go through the level to get to the top of the map. Since this is basically a map that we're looking at, as we're moving through the map, we can jump to get above these grass ledges. When we get to this second floor, you're going to see a bunch of these jelly-like enemies. They're just moving in place, circling around this Stonehenge type of object. If we jump, we can actually jump on top of them and destroy them, similar to how you would destroy different Goombas in Mario, if you've played that game before. I love Mario, actually. That was a game that I played quite a bit when I was a kid. Still love the game till this day. All the platforms that they have, all the games that have come out. A lot of inspiration could possibly come from Mario games. If I do create a platformer based on this template we already have, quite possibly I might just come up with my own levels, since I have an idea of how it would look like since I'm playing with this template for character 3.4. Once we jumped on top of all these characters, we move this box towards the Stonehenge object. That way we can get to the top, collect this star, and that's going to give us our first star of the level, it looks like. This game mechanic has a bunch of various things that I really like the joystick, the jump button, and then the star system, which I haven't seen in a lot of games that I've worked with. I think those are all important pieces that I think would be important for a game. If I do come back to this, maybe I'll keep the star system. I really like it. I haven't learned that part of the process, but I'm just going through the templates just to see if I'll use this for my characters. We get to this yellow moving platform, we jump on top, and it's going to bring us to the top where we meet another jelly-like enemy. We'll just jump on top of him and kill him. I like that too. I gotta look at how that's all set up. So far in the gameplay, it was pretty good. I had fun with this mechanic. You gotta collect the coins. These coins could possibly be for the typical stuff where you unlock different characters or different skins. There's more use cases for coins, but that's what I'm thinking about for this game so far. I like that there's moving platforms. It makes the gameplay super fun, having different platforms and you making the player wait a little bit before jumping. Otherwise, if you jump way too early, you might miss the platform and you have to start all over again and get to the top. That's pretty cool. There's like a risk reward happening. If you want that coin right away, you got to do it super fast. And also, there's a bunch of stars that are placed throughout the map. If you're one of those people that really like to just collect everything within the game, this really helps. Having the player just wander around the different levels and then just look for things that they need to solve to beat the level. That's what I really like about this template. It's a very good template for making a platformer in 3D that really works for our character. This is pretty good for a level 1. I really understand the mechanic. I'm 100% guarantee I can come up with another 50 levels which would be pretty cool to see what I come up with. I'd probably change some things, but so far I like that it's set up for us on what we can do. It's pretty complex already. It just showcases what you can do with Buildbox if you're super creative, and if you want to make a platformer game in 3D, this would be a pretty good template. I'm just using it for character 3.4, Dino Turtle, just testing out the gameplay, how my character would look like. When we reach the top, I can just jump on top of these slug enemies, or I can just skip it if I feel like I don't want to die. There's no death system yet, or a heart system. If I do the wrong move, I gotta start over, so I'm definitely not doing that. I think adding in probably a life system where the character has a bunch of hearts, similar to Legend of Zelda, where they have a heart system. That way the player won't feel cheated when they do a mess up. They'll at least have some sort of hearts available to continue where they messed up. I think that would be super helpful. But I just skipped that character to collect that last star. Once you collect that last star, it takes you to the win screen, which is the next UI, and it shows you all your points and all the stars you collected. When you tap to try again, it just restarts the level. That's the adventure run template in Buildbox that I'm using for character 3.4. I wanted to try it. It just makes sense. Might as well start trying these different templates. I do really like coming up with my own ideas, but at the same time, we got to change it up sometimes. You can't just focus on one thing, like coming up with ideas from scratch. You got to just try to use everything that's available to you as possible, just to see what you can do and what you can't. This was a really good template to experiment with. That concludes this video for character 3.4, Dino Turtle. We used the adventure run template. I thought it was a pretty good template. I felt like there's a lot of things that would work for this character if I did use this. I really like how the map was with the grass, with the dirt, with the moving platforms. We have these different boxes we can move around. There was a switch system, so we can switch things on and off to bring out platforms, and then we can jump around, collect coins. All pretty cool stuff for this template, and I think it's going to be super useful if I did decide to use it for this character or any other characters. That's how I look at Buildbox. I try to use things that's available. I think it's helpful to look at how different templates were built with different nodes. But that's only if you're a little bit more advanced. It's going to be very confusing to you if you just straight up went into Buildbox and went off of a template. There's a lot of nodes, so you're going to get confused. That's how it was for me when I used different templates. There's a bunch of nodes and you don't even know what you're doing. That's why it's important to just start from a blank template so that you can slowly ease yourself into it. That just makes more sense. That's why if you watch my videos from the beginning, you'll notice that I started with a whole bunch of blank templates and just played around with whatever characters that I came up with, whatever ideas that I thought of at the time, and I just drag nodes one by one. That just makes more sense starting off. That helps you get more familiar with the entire process. With Buildbox, it's just a tool. However you use it is entirely up to you. If you jump in right away with all the complex stuff like the templates, with all the nodes you don't know about, that's going to scare you off. That's going to make you feel like, oh, this is way too difficult. This is way too much. I don't want to build the game. I thought it was going to be easier than this. That's going to make you not want to build the game anymore. Definitely start from scratch. It's good to look at the templates, but don't let it scare you off. That's why I'm, I guess, making all these videos, because everyone thinks differently. I've had a lot more practice with Buildbox. Again, I'm still rusty. I'm trying my best to ease myself into it every day, learn something new. Hopefully you understand my thought process on the things that I'm doing. Even though I'm explaining things over and over, that's because I'm practicing, and it's better to practice during the video over and over so that you understand, okay, he's actually doing this multiple times. He probably did this like 10 or 15 or 20 times, and I only just started yesterday or something, or today, and I only did it one time. That's why I'm not familiar with the process. That's where the disconnect is. If you're just starting out, don't just compare it to me and be like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. Yes, you can, but at the same time, remember, I practiced this multiple times, but also many hours. That's why I'm a little bit more familiar with it. But for you guys, definitely take your time if this is something you want to do. That's how I've been making progress in all my games and in all my videos. I'm just doing a little bit each day at a time. That's just my approach. Some days I'm just super passionate, I'm super motivated, so you'll see me do a lot more. We're getting to that point with all my current characters that I'm working on. I'm going through the process a little bit more. I feel comfortable. I'm fine with different nodes now. I understand what nodes does what. So this is getting exciting. Like, we're getting to the exciting part of the videos. Definitely check out the next character that we have, character 3.5. I think there's character 3.5. There should be character 3.5. But I hope you learned a lot in this part 2 for the Buildbox version. Definitely check out all the other videos. There's so many things you can learn from the content I'm making. Hopefully that's been helping you guys. It's definitely been helping me remember a lot of little details about my projects. I'm actually excited for every little thing that I'm recording for all the projects that I'm working on, whether it's Blender, whether it's Buildbox. There's a lot of little details that I miss as I'm working, but it's good to review everything and record everything. It just makes sense. I love it. Please like and subscribe. It really helps. I tend to forget to say that, but at the same time, you guys know the drill. It's important to push this video out to as many people as possible, but hopefully it helps a lot of people as possible. It's always fun because we're making characters, we're making games the glitchy way, my way. We'll see you next video, so peace out.